Committee to order. Mr. Lid, it looks like we're only missing Mr. LaBonche. Let's go ahead and proceed with item number 1, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Rafael Breda of the CLA's office. I'll pitch the items as well. Item number 1, motion Puente Englander relative to directing Bureau of Sanitation to report in 30 days on its long-term strategy for solid waste disposal, and that will ensure that the residents of the city will not see significant rate hikes in their charges associated with the Puente Hills landfill closure. I have staff from the Bureau of Sanitation.
Very good.
Good afternoon, Council Chair and Council members. I'm Raina Pereira with the Bureau of Sanitation.
Javier Polanco, Bureau of Sanitation.
Okay, I'd just like to start with a little bit of background on our disposal program. Approximately 10 million tons of municipal solid waste is generated in the city of Los Angeles, of which the residential single-family program is run by the Bureau of Sanitation, and we pick up approximately 3,300 tons per day through our curbside 3-bin program, which also includes the green bin for yard trimmings, the blue bin for recyclables, and some brown bins for horse manure. The commercial sector includes is managed through approximately 130 private hauler contracts currently, and approximately 7,500 tons per day of multifamily and commercial solid waste is collected through our private haulers. Currently, we have 2 landfill disposal contracts for our residential program that's collected by our sanitation drivers. And that's with Sunshine Canyon Landfill and El Sobrante. We also have 3 transfer station contracts with Falcon, Southern Disposal, and our city-owned facility, which is Klotz. And we also have 1 waste-to-energy facility that we take approximately 100 tons per day, located in Long Beach, and that's for our harbor waste shed. So just to give you a brief background on the Puente Hills landfill closure, the landfill is expected to close this October, and it's permitted to take 13,000 tons per day of trash. However, right now their average daily tonnage that they receive at the landfill is approximately 7,000 tons. An ordinance that was passed by the County Sanitation Board of Directors back in 1981 basically excluded City of Los Angeles trash, both commercial as well as residential, going to the Puente Hills landfill. So as a result, sanitation and the residential collected trash has never, since 81, has never gone to Puente Hills. And in 2011, they amended the ordinance because of the reduction in tons going to Puente Hills to allow LA trash from coming in. However, that was just from the commercial sector, and that ranged from 2011 to 2013 from 6% when the ordinance was amended to about 24% of the total Puente Hills tonnage received coming from the city of LA. So also kind of a bigger picture, Athens has just secured a contract with San Bernardino County to manage all their landfills and transfer stations. And as a result, they've been taking a lot of the City of LA trash that they currently collect over to San Bernardino, as well as Waste Management and Republic. They're doing the haul, the longer haul, and already kind of accommodating the eventual shutdown of Puente Hills. The landfill cost for sanitation with our contracts ranges from approximately $24 per ton to $50 per ton, depending on whether it's a landfill contract or one of our transfer station contracts. And right now, Sunshine, which takes the majority of our municipal solid waste, is anticipated to close in 2035. Given just the our city residential needs for the sanitation program, as well as the future growth of the city, both from a residential and commercial capacity standpoint, we believe that the city does have adequate disposal capacity through 2030 within the local region, including Riverside County and Orange County, San Bernardino County as well. Besides the landfill itself, the city, through the council-adopted Renew LA plan that was adopted in 2006, has taken a more global perspective of looking at zero waste, achieving a goal of zero waste by 2025. Our current diversion from landfill is at 76.4% right now. We have many recycling and diversion programs in place, and the goal of our solid waste integrated resource plan, which is our 20-year master plan to reach zero waste by 2025, includes additional programs like rolling out food scrap recycling, both on a commercial and residential level, adding textiles and additional bulky items that are currently being landfilled, diverting them and recycling them, recovering them. So with that, basically what we're looking at is, with our existing programs, our goal to achieving zero waste, getting additional diversion and tonnage out of the landfills, and the existing regional capacity within the region, we believe that the City of LA should be able to handle our long-term future needs from a disposal standpoint.
Does that conclude
Yes,
your presentation? Very good. So you gave me a percentage in terms of what, I think you said 24% in terms of sort of what is going to Puente Hills. Is that the right percentage?
Yeah, and that's pretty much the commercial sector. Right now, as of 2013 numbers, it's approximately 24% of their daily intake is coming from the City of LA.
And in terms of tons, how much is that? So it's 24% of the 7,000 that they're sort of taking in every day, is that?
Yeah, and that's about just under 1,700 tons a day.
And so relative to sort of what the City of Los Angeles is producing in tonnage, what sort of a percentage of that?
It's actually very low because total residential and commercial tonnage is about just around 10,000, and we're taking in about 1,700 tons to Puente, so we're talking about, I think, 15% total of our...
And so from your perspective then, understanding that from a regional perspective, you think there's plenty of capacity through 2030. In the short term for us to sort of prepare for this closure, what are we doing? I mean, you help me understand sort of globally what we're doing, but specifically to address the 1,700 or so tons on a daily basis, where would it be going, and what would it mean in terms of tipping fees and sort of additional, if any, additional cost to the city?
Okay, well, certainly from the residential side, none of our trash is going to Puente. It hasn't gone to Puente since 81 because of the county ordinance. So from a residential cost perspective, possible rate hikes, it would not affect any of our residents. So the 1,700 tons is really a commercial stream that's run by private haulers. As I mentioned, Athens and Republic, Waste Management, a lot of their tons that used to go to Puente Hills, they're currently doing direct haul to their own managed landfills, either in San Bernardino or Riverside County. So those tons would essentially, the private hauler would make the decision as to where to take that tonnage once the landfill closes.
But based on that decision, would that impact the City of Los Angeles? Do we have, let's say they make a decision to go to sort of different places and it costs them more. Does that affect us?
Well, it wouldn't directly.
Not directly, but I mean, as a result, would it have an impact on our capacity and potentially additional costs for us?
Well, we have our capacity locked in with the current agreements that we have. And then all the tonnage coming from, that's going to Puente Hills now would either end up at Athens, San Bernardino County landfills, or in that Puente Hills MRF that they have there, or possibly Orange County, so wouldn't have an impact on us.
Okay.
Councilmember, to the extent that Enrique Zaldivar, Director of Sanitation, to the extent that the privately collected waste is also an item of interest to us, and we got to ensure, as you pointed out in your question, it's whether residential or commercial, it's still the city. Puente Hills, County San themselves intends to provide transfer options for folks who had been their customers, and they will have contracts with places like Orange County landfills. So that would be an option for the private holders who wouldn't have an alternative otherwise. But there's plenty, as Javier and Reina alluded to, there's plenty of in-region options for even the smaller private holders who do not have their own landfills. Will there be a cost increment? Well, if transfer will now be required, chances are there will be a cost increment. So the option could be that they direct hauls to one of the closer landfills, or depending on where they are in the city, they may choose to transfer. But we believe we will have a stable transition.
Very good. Before Mr. Blumenfield, I think it's important to celebrate our diversion rate is 76.4%, and the
That's
state
correct.
mandate is 60%? Or is it 70 now?
It's 50%, and it's, well, and with a goal of 75% by 2020.
Very good. Great. Thank you for that. Mr. Blumenfield.
Great. No, that's a great point. It's great that our goal is 0% by that year. I was curious about the other impacts besides just the, where to send it, impacts on traffic and specifically Sunshine Canyon. Is a lot of this the waste going to go to, or any of it? I heard you mention Puente, the MERV, and other areas, but how much would be diverted to Sunshine?
Well, County Sanitation Districts, in anticipation of closing Puente Hills landfill, they put out an RFP, and so it's likely that it's either going to go to Athens. Most of the waste that's taken there, 2,000 to 3,000 tons of it, is controlled by Athens haulers, and since Athens is the operator, San Bernardino County, 2,000 to 3,000 out of the 7,000 will end up with them, and then the Puente Hills MRF, depending on the results of that RFP, somewhere around 800 tons coming out of that MRF that will still be waste, that will still need to be buried. That might end up at, it could end up at Sunshine, depending on the results of the RFP, it could be Orange County, whoever bid on that, Waste Management. And then they made arrangements with Orange County landfill so that any of the waste that's taken to their Southgate transfer station or Dart transfer station operated by LA County Sand, that waste would go there. That's about 2,000 tons. So it could be about 800 more tons, possibly, if the Sunshine were to win that bid.
About 800 more tons could go there. And what does that mean in terms of trucks on the road?
Well, let's see.
It's hard for me to make
About
that.
80
trucks.
80
Yeah.
trucks additional.
Each truck's about a ton?
Yes, Sunshine
10.
has a capacity of 12,000 tons per day. Right now, I think they're at about
They're at 8,000. They're at
So there's
8,000.
capacity there from a permit and a sheer capacity point of view. But, the market will dictate in the beginning how much more and how much more additional goes to Sunshine Canyon.
Very good. Members, any additional questions? Hearing and seeing none, we will go ahead and approve the item. Thank you very much. Item number 2, Mr. Lidd. Oh, Mr. Bredo.
We share the duty. It's okay. Item number 2, motion, Blumenfield, Englander, Fuentes, relative to instructing the Bureau of Sanitation to provide an overview of goals and initiatives of its new Division of Environmental Sustainability. We have staff from the Bureau of Sanitation.
Good afternoon, Tracy Menamidi, Chief Operating Officer, Bureau of Sanitation.
Good afternoon, Boruj Apkian, Assistant Director with Sanitation.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. We're here to respond to the motion that was introduced by Councilman Blumenfield to report on sanitation's environmental sustainability efforts and some of the goals and initiatives that we have ongoing. Certainly for sanitation, so much of the work that we do on a daily basis revolves around what can be done to protect the environment, and that definitely is one piece, and a very large piece of our mission. What we do want to talk a little bit about today is environmental sustainability from not just a sanitation perspective, but a citywide, more global perspective, and what can we do across the entire city. There's a lot of programs that we have been doing, which we just wanted to touch on a little bit today, and then talk about our next steps and what we can do to support the council and the mayor's office in this area. One of the things that sanitation has spent significant effort doing is working on our carbon emission inventory, not only for the activities that we do in our bureau, but also citywide. So we have established a basic foundation for which the city can work towards reducing our footprint. We've also implemented a construction and demolition ordinance. That ordinance applies to all work being done by contractors within the City of Los Angeles to recycle the demolition waste that they have. We've implemented a low-impact development ordinance. This requires developers to incorporate sustainable practices such as infiltration into the groundwater, capture and use, rain gardens, bioswales, implementation of porous pavement, and so on. Another effort that we have is our stream protection policy. We also have a Green Streets handbook, a rain barrel program, which we have put out through a grant program to our residents, an urban canopy tree planting program, our clean fuel program. We also, as you all are very aware of, are currently working on our solid resources franchising program, which will implement many environmental practices for the commercial providers throughout the city of Los Angeles. We also recently implemented our single-use plastic bag ban policy and have done many things in this regard that look at what we can do citywide. A lot of this effort began back in fiscal year 10-12 when we absorbed some of the staff from the Environmental Affairs Department. At that point, we began to look at things at a more global perspective. What we would like to do from this point forward is work with the Environmental Committee here, as well as full council and the Mayor's Office through the new Chief Sustainability Officer to take steps forward, look at ways that we can respond to your needs, and develop a sustainability program that we can bring forth through the Mayor's Office and follow through with City Council. I'd like to give our Assistant Director, Bruce Apkin, a few minutes to talk about some of the initiatives that we have in our new goals that we've recently established.
Good afternoon. The Bureau, on a kind of a systematic basis, develops a strategic plan on a yearly basis. And some of the goals and initiatives that we have carries on through several years. Some are short-term, some are long-term. One of the most important things that is a kind of as an environmental arm of the City Council, the Mayor, this Bureau, this utility agency, essentially look at entire, as Tracy mentioned, carbon footprint for the entire city, involving all departments. By establishing that, obviously, the intention is to reduce the greenhouse gases to minimize the effects on climate change. And the result of the climate change, obviously, what we need to do as a city, obviously develop some adaptation plans, assess where we're vulnerable as it relates to extreme temperatures. Either could be rains, which could flood the city in various areas, or it could have a very dry season that will invite fire kind of an environment, or it could generate seawater rise that could impose some kind of a flooding issue with our different facilities. So part of this effort, not only look into the entire inventory, but also seeing and working with other departments, how can we reduce that, and how can we create some kind of an adaptation plan to increase the city's preparedness on dealing with some of these climate extremes. That's one of the citywide efforts that this bureau leads. Obviously, from several years ago, we've been heading towards converting a lot of our vehicles, especially large vehicles, to clean fuel program. And we have reached some good milestones so far, but the road is still ahead of us for a year and a half from now to do a complete conversion to clean fuel program, CNG or LNG, for a lot of our vehicles. And many other departments are in the same kind of theme as it relates to this sort of conversion. Another area that we are looking at is to establish some kind of funding, develop a low-interest revolving financial assistance program for those people that are they're not connected to the sewers. They're using on-site treatment facilities and also have septic tanks, to encourage them to join the sewer system, and also renew some of their laterals that connect from the house connection into the sewers, in order to, again, protect the environment, protect the groundwater, and be able to do our mission better. One of the last things that I'd like to address is some of the challenges that my colleague on the next motion will address, are the challenge of pursuing strategies for sustainable funding in support of the watershed water quality program. That is something that's very important to our utility organization and to the city as a whole. And in the next motion, Mr. Haj Khalil will elaborate more on that.
Very good. Before we go to debate here, let's go ahead and take our speaker card. Dr. Tom Williams.
Good afternoon. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, also Sierra Club Water Committee, and a few others. A long time ago, 1971, we had a course at Berkeley. It's called Man and His Environment. It was a real wild one then. Sustainability was very important. Efficiency was very important. But we soon realized that we are not sustainable. The number of roads, the number of sidewalks, can we sustain this? So I would highly recommend that for the new division, that they have a 5-year program. What are their objectives? Where's the costs going to go? And where's the revenue going to come from? Revenue. That'll be an interesting one, because I presume that one of the goals will be water. Well, we have the DWP here right now. Why don't they have a division of environmental sustainability? It seems like they're related. Oh, by the way, another 1,000 acre-feet of water went to the Santa Monica Bay today, only treated to a secondary level. We import it, we throw it away. So sustainability is very important. Have the division prepare a 5-year look-ahead program as to what they're going to cover, goals and objectives, and actually how they're going to pay for this and what will be the resources. Right now, my Public Works bill is higher than my DWP bill. So we're quite concerned regarding the costs and revenues, and I presume this will be for the stormwater. So please provide additional information for 5 years.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Since we have the maker of the motion present, Mr. Blumenfield, did you have some questions?
Sure. No, and I want to first, commend about this new division. I think is great and part of my asking this motion is to try to tease this out and let us move forward on this. And with regard to actually the last speaker, I do see that there's a very strong relationship, and I'm hoping that as you develop this, you'll see that between sanitation and the water supply and DWP. As you know, as everybody knows, I mean, if a drop of water that's saved is a drop we don't have to bring down from, over the Tehachapi, saving all on our electric bill, and a drop that we don't have to, of water saved that's going to help us on our bills as well as water conservation. So it is all inextricably linked, and as you develop this report, it would be good to sort of show those links, how it all works. I'm curious about, to sort of ask it in a question, and I know we're going to continue this and talk about it in more depth, but what you think the biggest, most ambitious goals that you have are, just sort of the broad picture, and how you compare that to other cities, and I want that to be part of the report as well, as sort of benchmarking where we are compared to other cities and sort of best practices and that type of thing.
Well, one thing I would like to respond to is the discussion about our connection with the water. In sanitation, we treat the wastewater, two aspects really. One is stormwater and one is wastewater. We treat the wastewater and we treat it to recyclable standards. And we work in partnership with the Department of Water and Power. We have a few very large projects right now in the works to take that water, recycle it to a higher level, to advanced level, and utilize it for groundwater infiltration and recharge. So we definitely see that as a very big part of environmental sustainability, just as you said, to reduce our demand on potable water and reduce our need to bring it down from the north and the energy that it takes to do that. So those are big projects that we have underway. Another aspect is that of stormwater and infiltration and recharge. And our watershed program encompasses a lot of projects that address that need.
I'd like to. The Bureau is tracking our key performance indicators as well as workload indicators. It's not how we say how good we are, but from the recently the Bureau received from the National Association of Clean Water Agencies the highest prize that was given to only 3 agencies in the whole country as it relates to how good we do what we do. So that was an testament to some of the things that we do. Presently, the previous speakers talk about 76.4% on the recycling rate. That rate among the large cities is number 1. And as you said, that we probably going to be having ambitious goals on definitely having a leadership role in that arena on approaching zero waste. In the arena of clean water, which is our collection system as well as the wastewater treatment systems, is one of the largest in the nation. Very complex, extremely large. With the efforts that are in front of us and challenges facing us, we are focusing towards air treatment facilities, making them more optimized to make the, again, effect on air quality much better. We are trying to harness sustainable resources, such as from the treatment of wastewater, we do generate solids that are converted to digester gas, which is equivalent to methane or natural gas. We're trying to harness that energy and produce green energy. With our initiatives in the area of solar, we are trying to equip many of our facilities. So these are some of the initiatives that we are pursuing and trying to take a leadership role in the nation as recognized by many of these organizations that are predominant in the nation. So I hope that answered on some of the benchmarking questions that you had, Council Member.
Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And obviously, I'm delighted to have a division of environmental sustainability so we can describe the good environmental work we're doing as something other than just sanitation. People actually understand what's going on. we've been examining the commercial waste system over the last couple of years, and one of the things we've talked about and we're already addressing is treatment of fats, oils, and grease using anaerobic digester tanks at Hyperion. And I want us to keep an eye on potential greenhouse gas emission problems with that. But I'd like us, in general, to take that kind of thinking and apply it to the whole waste stream. I'd like the Sustainability Division to look at extended producer responsibility and partnering with companies in the area to reduce our need for landfill space. How can we work with local companies and manufacturers to encourage them to take a cradle-to-cradle look, so they look at the end of the product as in terms of how they can recycle the entire product, make it entirely recyclable? Are we planning on having that being a part of this division, or can we put that on your radar screen somehow?
Yes, definitely that's something that we can spend some time working on. We do some of that work now through our pretreatment programs and working with the industrial users on how to reduce from the wastewater perspective. I think what you're talking about is on the solids perspective, and we can certainly pursue that further.
Good. And also, I don't know if there's a way for us to encourage using our local recycled waste stream as a local resource, because right now we recycle paper, we put it in the bin, we sell it to China, they turn it into a box, and they send it all the way back here. It seems like there's a lot of waste in that process, and we should be able to find a way to encourage local manufacturing so that paper waste stream and other waste streams are turned into something here rather than having to go all the way to China or India or wherever we may be using it currently.
Right.
So I don't know if that's part of the thought process, but I would also encourage us to take a look at that. And we talked about stormwater funding, which I guess will be mostly discussed under the next item. But I don't know if we're looking at all the elements of water as part of this, making sure we maximize the stormwater and the sewage water that we have that we can recycle, and cleaning up our aquifers, et cetera. I don't know if this division is primarily focused on that, or the DWP, or a combination thereof.
Let me address a couple of the points. Councilmember Koretz, first of all, I do not want to miss the opportunity to update you on what you had challenged us to do in a couple of our previous committee meetings, and that is that we audit our recycling stream as it goes overseas. And so as we speak, we're planning an auditing trip to the Far East so that we will look at where the paper, primarily the cardboard, some of our e-waste now may be going overseas as well. So we're going to be doing an auditing trip. Very good. Not a touristy trip. It's a work trip. So I wanted to make sure that we update you on that. Secondly, with regards to the questions of the division, I know we're trying to centralize our efforts with regards to sustainability. Right now, we're thinking of a division. It may be that we remain on a matrix approach with some centralization. Certainly, Tracy at the executive level is the main sustainability person in sanitation. We're looking forward and are excited for the new Chief Sustainability Officer that the mayor just appointed a week ago or so, and Matt Peterson. He begins next week. And so we will be talking very actively with him with regards to the citywide approach as he sees it and the mayor sees it. But with all of the broader efforts, certainly Water and Power has the highest profile from a carbon footprint point of view, renewables and the others. All of you, of course, know firsthand the AB 32 that has very clear and explicit requirements for carbon emission reductions. And in fact, the cap and trade is alive and thriving. So we got to position the city to be in a position to take advantage of that. at the very least, to be able to read and understand how that market is going to go. Baruch alluded to the inventory that we have done already for the entire city of carbon emissions. That's a starting point. And it's important that we know where we stand relative to AB 32. So at least we know that. But with your guidance and the mayor's chief sustainability officer, in collaboration with many of the other departments, but certainly the Department of Water and Power, we believe we can present a good program moving forward for you.
Very good. Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Saldivar, for that, because I think it's more important than just knowing, for example, what our emissions footprint is. It's the law, number one, and number two, there's real potential penalties for the city of Los Angeles depending on where we fit in sort of our allotted emissions amount. Unless something's different, there's a potential for us to have to pay the state of California based on how much our outputs are versus what we're allotted. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, certain industries are already under the cap or in the cap, if you will. There will be others that will be brought over subsequent eventually. Right now, it's the energy sector, there will be the transportation sector, and there will likely be other subsequent sectors. So it's important that we, first of all, understand who's out, who's in, and who's in compliance, who's not, how we can do internal trading, if you will. I mean, there may be some departments that may have offsets that are applicable to other departments who need the offsets. So we want to play that role as a facilitating agency for the entire city.
And to that end, is one of the goals of this new division to be the traffic cop, as it were, for that sort of accounting as to who's doing what in terms of emissions and who's got the offsets? Because to me, that sort of is under the umbrella of sustainability. So I don't know if it falls under DWP's role. I see them getting a little nervous about that. But who is sort of that centralized sort of place where we can understand how the city is doing relative to compliance with the law, and for me, relative to the potential liability that Los Angeles has with respect to AB 32?
Well, for any potential liability, we, of course, would want it all to be with DWP. But
these days, that seems to be all the fad these days.
For the inventory and the accounting and the facilitation, we want, and I'm partly joking, but I'm saying, we want to play and be the inventory control agency, not so much the enforcement agency by any means, but certainly the inventory and the facilitator working with each of the departments. I'm not saying that DWP would need our help. They may welcome our help, but I'm not saying they need our help, because they by far have the highest profile in carbon emissions. So I know they have a great program already underway, but we simply want to facilitate and report for the entire city.
And that's really helpful, because, I mean, obviously, they, as a result of sort of what their product is and the emissions that they have to sort of put out, I think it's important. But I think the recent exercise in understanding how these proprietary agencies fit into our governance, it really is important for me to understand who is sort of monitoring all of that information. I don't have any quarrel with AB 32. I think it's a perfect intersection of market forces and the regulatory environment, and I think it's really genius in sort of how they've set up a system. But what I don't want to see is Los Angeles having to, without any ability to sort of divert, I don't want to see Los Angeles have to sort of get double dinged here. It's not that I don't agree with the penalty phase of AB 32. I just would hate for monies that Los Angeles pays to offset sort of emissions somewhere else in the state. And I think that would be a real loss to us. But coming back to sort of what the goals and initiatives of this new division, one thing that was mentioned as an example in terms of septic tanks and that sort of thing is, will you all, one of the goals, will it be to be the keeper of citywide goals and initiatives, or is it just for the Department of Sanitation?
We're proposing that it be for citywide. I mean, we willingly assume the responsibilities of the Environmental Affairs Department. Mr. Labange, you remember that, Mr. Koretz, and of course Mr. Weezer. And that happened 3 years ago. Tracy mentioned it. And so, we assumed their responsibilities, and that was one of them. The citywide monitor, as you said, Councilmember Fuentes, for all citywide sustainability efforts, including the climate change adaptation plan, which, began and drafted in the initial stages, but we haven't completed it. It hasn't been finalized. So that's one of the things we will have to do now.
And that's refreshing. And I think in addition to sort of monitoring, what would be, if I could plant a seed here, be incredibly helpful is also having an inventory of all the available sort of programs that are able to be utilized by our residents to be more sustainable. I remember in the good old days we had sort of the low flush toilets, we had the light bulb, we had now potentially a revolving account to be able to mitigate some of the septic tank sort of hookups. It'd be, I think, really helpful to all of us if you all were the keepers of that sort of centralized list of everything that's available. I mean, your department, for example, with the earth machine, which is incredibly subsidized and such a value for residents who want to compost, I think, and they're in Griffith Park, Mr. Labange, if you haven't,
half hour ago.
And thank you for the strawberry plant, by the way.
Yes, I think those are really great, and sometimes in order to find some of these real gems in the city, it's difficult to sort of navigate through all of the different websites and that sort of thing. So if we knew that your new division was also sort of the keeper of the sustainability effort, I think it would go a long way. So I really do want to thank you for taking this on, and the EAD, I remember that, and its new sort of reincarnation is very good. And Mr. Blumenfield, thank you so much for the motion. I think this is a very good thing that we're doing here, and I'm looking forward to you all coming back with a written report for a future meeting.
Very good.
So we'll continue. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Labange.
I did hear enough of it to say something. Let me ask a question. There used to be a CAO's office here. There was a John, you want to, maybe you got the history behind? The CAO had a petroleum coordinator. I don't think they have anymore, right? You still do it. Okay, the only question I'd say to the committee, city administrative officer has a vision that goes from wall to wall, hopefully, on everything that they do. And not to stick you with more, but our Public Works building is down at Broadway and 12th Street. Water and power is throughout the county and also throughout the country. I just worry that if it's all on this back right here, that we may be doing well here or not there, or that just it's a very large, this is not an easy thing. And also, for Los Angeles in particular, because I think there's 19 cities that touch our borders, or 21 cities that touch our borders. I think of the East Los Angeles Commerce, City of Industry area, those avenues of where the wind blows, impact it has on the city. East San Fernando Valley, impact it has on that area. Do we look at things regionally in a way? Because it's very difficult when you look at Los Angeles from San Pedro to Chatsworth and try to be under the same umbrella. That's my only thought, and I have 1,000% confidence in both Water and Power and the Bureau of Sanitation, but I just think that there should be asked that there should be someone who overlooks it, at least to be the person who makes sure that we're touching all the bases. Because what happens, there's a challenge that takes us off our focus, and we have to regroup, and whatever it is, this is like someone up in the press box looking down and tell the coach what's just happened on the field, as opposed to being on the field. They're on the field, if you know the analogy.
I think those are really strong points, which is, rather than approving this motion, Mr. Blumenfield has asked me to continue it. Let's let them get sort of a first stab at it, and then we'll try to sort of take a look at it from there. And certainly, I imagine there'll be a deluge of interest and motion subsequently from this council, asking you all to incorporate different things in this new department. One was alluded to by Mr. Koretz with the EPR, the Extended Product Responsibility movement that's afoot. So we can't wait to see what you come up with. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Prieto, shall we go to item number 3?
Certainly. Number 3, motion Blumenfield, Englander, Fuentes, relative to instructing the Bureau of Sanitation to report on future funding options for stormwater cleanup projects and its operation and maintenance.
Mr. Blumenfield's been busy here. We'll have staff go ahead and present on item number 3. If you could read your names into the record, sir.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members. Adel Hashkali, Assistant Director for Sanitation.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members. Shahram Karagani, Watershed Protection Manager, Bureau of Sanitation.
As you know, Los Angeles became the great city that it is because of water. And for us to continue to flourish as a great city is if we continue to protect water and manage it in a sustainable way, which is building on what we just talked about. And that's the culture we have and the values we have in the city and in sanitation. Stormwater is an essential element of this water management. Every time it rains in Los Angeles, half an inch of rain, about 2.5 billion gallons of water is washed down the ocean, carrying pollution into our water, while we import 85% of our water from somewhere else. That's the imbalance that we talked about and started talking about 12 years ago in LA as leaders in this country in talking about and managing water as one water. 12 years ago, we established a process under sanitation in partnership with our stakeholders in the community and our Water and Power Department to develop the Integrated Resources Plan that looked at managing water and looking at the leveraging of resources, because we understand that water and stormwater is not a pollution. It's a resource, and that's the shift that we had. And that's a discussion we had to develop in the Low Impact Development Ordinance and many of the things that we have developed and we have implemented so far. There's more to be done. One of the biggest things that we have under stormwater sanitation is the responsible agency in compliance with the stormwater permit under the state law and the Clean Water Act. Recently, end of last year, we have a new stormwater permit, which I believe is an innovative permit, but very demanding. The permit before, we had about 2 total maximum daily loads or 2 regulations for compliance with water limits, water quality limits. Now we have 22 in the new permit. So there's a lot of things that we have to do. The interesting thing as part of the new permit and as part of our ability to work with the region and with the state regulators and the State Water Resource Control Board is where we agreed that we should manage that as part of a watershed management, not as addressing each pollutant by itself. Because basically you can do a lot of things if you manage it as on a watershed. So what we're working on right now is what we call an enhanced water management plan for each of our 4 watersheds that we're involved in: the LA River, Ballena Creek, Santa Monica Bay, and Dominguez Channel. And that is not done alone, because water does not know boundary. The watershed includes other cities, but as a city, as a leader in this region, we are leading the 4 watersheds. And that's going to be required to be completed within 18 months, Shahram. And that would really set the framework of how to meet the water quality limits and compliance while managing it as a resource and improving the quality of life and the quality of water in the region as a watershed. So that's already underway. We're working on it, which is a huge shift in the permit, and thanks to our stakeholders and the state for working with us and providing the flexibility that's needed for us to start shifting the effort. If you look at the projection of what we need to comply with the water quality mandates that we see before us over the next 20 years, we estimate about $8 billion is something that we need to do over the next 20 years.
Can you repeat that for me? You estimated the $8 billion for what exactly?
It's for compliance with the water quality mandates for stormwater in Los Angeles.
Over the course of how long?
20 years.
20 years, okay.
This is a challenge, but also it's an exciting opportunity, because if we do it in a smart way, and that's the watershed concept, the investment of money can address pollution, but also can be done in a way that you can capture that water, infiltrate that water, reuse it, or green communities, green neighborhoods, convert asphalt to parks, areas like we did in South Los Angeles, where we have a parking lot, an MTA parking lot that now is a wetland park. Whether you look at Sun Valley in Elmer Street, where we converted a street that used to flood all the time, carrying pollution to the LA River, into now a green street called Elmer Green Street, where we're capturing 40 acres of runoff underground for infiltration and converting it.
You mentioned Elmer Street, just so I remember, that's where you had the dry well placement?
Actually, Elmer Street is not. It's actually Glen Oaks is where we have the dry wells.
Okay.
Yeah, this one is actually much bigger. The Elmer Street, actually, the entire street was torn up, and we built 2 big infiltration galleries two huge pipes, that all the runoff from 40 acres that used to flood that intersection now is going underground into the East Valley that is a source of groundwater for all of us. And then the entire neighborhood, 28 homes, were converted into a low-impact development, homes with grassy swales, porous pavement, and we just recently finished downstream from that what we call Elmer Paseo, which is the alley that used to be an eyesore. Now the alley is a green alley connecting people and also managing runoff. That example is being done across the city gradually with limited funding that we have. Right now, the stormwater program, in 1992, we established a utility fee for stormwater. It's about $28 million a year, and since 1992 has not changed. So we've been dealing with this, trying to run a marathon on a water bottle, which is just difficult because I ran a marathon back in 2006, if you believe it, and I could not do it on a water bottle. The exciting thing is our stakeholders to this one water concept really rallied behind the city and the leadership of the city, the mayor, the city council, and the stakeholders. Proposition O came in 2004, where we had approval of a bond measure by 76% approval, probably the highest bond approval since, I'm not sure which, there's only one ahead of it. We got $500 million of bond to demonstrate these projects, and those projects are already underway. Most of them have been built, as few of them are being finished also, and some are still being constructed. But it came in as a down payment. We're able to leverage some of that to get some Prop 50 money, Prop 84 money, some other funding, and use Prop K on the parks to leverage projects. The last project we just finished was Echo Park Lake, which is a jewel addressing a impaired water body into a way that gave something back to the community that they're proud of, and everybody under leadership of then Councilman Garcetti and now Mayor Garcetti. That was a great project that we all embrace and looking at. The challenge we're looking at right now is we have a taste of what's possible by what we did in the down payment from Prop O. But imagine if we do a Prop O a year in Los Angeles or the region. What would happen to Los Angeles? What would happen to our communities? What would happen to our cities? You know, Councilman Labange remembers North Atwater. We were able to leverage resources and restore the stream by the LA River and bring the people back to the river and address water quality and the pollution from the horses and other things to manage that runoff into the area. In Councilman Weezer's area in Garvanza Park, I mean, that's a huge area where we're able to take and build a 1 million-gallon cistern under a park in Highland Park and capture runoff from the area, reuse it for irrigating the park, and then we use Prop K money along with money from the Water Quality Fund to redo the park, redo the playground, and give something back to the community, but also make it sustainable. That across the entire city, we've done examples, and the challenge is how can we now continue doing that and building on it? And that comes the gap of funding, the challenge that we're all dealing with. And we have been very creative. I would acknowledge the creativity of the city of trying to really run and address and provide and comply with the law with limited budget. We have been doing that. The first DMDL that we addressed, water quality challenge or impairment, was the trash. And we're proud to report to you that with 100% compliance, actually trash into the LA River, Barna Creek is down by 90% because of the investment that we have made from Prop O in the catch basin screens and all the devices to address trash. And we're leading the country. Everybody's now learning from how to address trash and address it and do it in the right way.
And we're at 100%.
Actually, 90% compliance and 10% from the institutional measures. And we're doing the final analysis to certify to be 100%. The bacteria TMDL into Santa Monica Bay, that's another next TMDL for dry weather. That means during swimming days, we had a lot of beaches that had issues. As you know now, under Hilda Bay's report card, our beaches are the best beaches now in grade A on all of them. And because of the innovation that we've done in diverting pollution and putting it into the sewer system or managing it in a way that does not get into our waterways and pollute it, that has been really a great accomplishment. Now we're moving to the next phase, which is addressing it during wet weather, which is a little bit more challenging because there's a lot more rain during wet weather. In the city downtown, I mean, a lot of people don't know, we have low flow diversions in streets like 7th Street, 6th Street that divert runoff from even, areas that is, people see as a potential source of pollution, Skid Row and others, that we have runoff and we capture that runoff, put it in the sewer system to prevent it from going into the LA River. So to me, there's a challenge and not a question how we address the funding. So we've been having a dialogue over the last 4 years. I mean, we've been working with the CLA, CAO, the mayor's office, the council, and would look forward to having more dialogue with the new leadership in the city and also with getting the input and the idea with the new council and the mayor and the leadership to see how we can move forward. So we worked for about 3 or 4 years with the CLA, Rafael Pereiro and others from CAO, and worked closely with us to build this partnership with the region to do a water quality funding initiative at a county-wide level. We worked really hard with the stakeholders to provide support. It kind of received a little glitch, whatever you call it. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I'm always optimistic, and that's good news. We went to the Board of Supervisors, and there were some issues and concerns, and I think it has been put on the back burner. And the big issue that the county has seen is that the cities other than Los Angeles and maybe Long Beach and Downey did not really rally behind this, did not see this as really a need. Los Angeles sees this as a huge need because I think it's not just addressing water quality, it's really revitalizing and recreating and reinventing Los Angeles to a great place for us to live, for our children to live. The question now what we do, there's a lot of work happening at the cities level. Actually, I attended along with Sharam a meeting with the League of Cities for Southern California and the contract cities, and we actually urge all of them to really look at this opportunity and really say whether they really want this or not. And I think what we need to do is have the cities really opt in or opt out. It should not be left to them to ride the train without really buying a ticket. They should buy a ticket first. So we'll continue to look at this issue. We are continuing the partnership with the county and looking at opportunities. The option that we always have is as a city, we can always go and look at our own opportunity and maybe look at others to partner with us who are willing to step up to the plate. We continue to leverage our funding through grants. We have not been successful. I mean, Los Angeles as a big city does not get its fair share, I think, but just because people think we can afford it. But, we've been good at getting grants, about $3 million a year in stormwater grants, a little bit more sometimes. Thanks a lot of it to the state by providing us the funding. Looking at future bonds, there's always opportunity to see if there's a way we can really highlight the need for stormwater to be a key element in any future bonds, whether it's the water bond or any local regional bonds that are looked at. Also, there is the sources of pollution. Can we really tag the fees or the cost to the sources of pollution? We have addressed the issue of plastic bags by us going after banning the plastic bags and developing policy, but there's other things such as lead, zinc, and other things that can come from other things that we can really look at maybe there's a way we can look at ways to capture that cost. And then the biggest one, I think, is the opportunity is water. Stormwater is a resource. So why not monetize that value? So our sisters and agencies and the water agencies, maybe there's a way that they can really invest in stormwater as a new source of water. As they invest in recycled water or desal, they can invest in stormwater. And that can create a revolving source of funding. That has not happened yet. We still are trying to put the money, and the other benefit is just they gain the benefit without really putting up the money. The great news is that our sisters in Water and Power are working with us on a rainwater harvesting master plan, which is a huge shift for all of us to really look at the value of that water. So, but it's beyond just Water and Power. It's the Mets and all the other agencies that need to look at water as a resource, and maybe there's a way we can monetize it. We look forward to more dialogue with you. We are working very hard on compliance. O&M is our biggest challenge right now, is maintaining our resources. We're suffering about 50% vacancy in our operational staff because of limited funding. The $28 million that was passed in 1992 is still the same $28 million we're dealing with today. And it's our challenges, as you would realize, has increased probably in either 10, 20, or 100 folds from 1992. We are very hard we have very dedicated staff that work hard every day. They take their job seriously. As you know, today there was a fire this morning in Van Nuys and Roscoe from a plating company, which, anytime there's a fire, that's a life and safety. But our staff were there responding to the impacts of water quality and the river, the runoff that comes out from the plating company. A lot of people don't hear that. A lot of people do not hear the response that happens behind the scenes. Fire is great. We salute them, but we have hardworking people working behind the scenes, protecting our waters and our infrastructure. We look forward to working with you and working with the mayor as we move forward to making this city and continue to make this city a great city to live. Thank you.
Very good. Let's go ahead and take the two speaker cards that we have before we go to debate. First speaker card is for Dr. Tom Williams. You can come on up. And after Mr. Williams will be Kirsten James from Heal the Bay.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, also Sierra Club Water Committee. Be careful. This is a repeat of Prop O. Prop O was $500 million only capital. No operations, no maintenance. When I worked with the ADB, Asian Development Bank, and World Bank, we had to show a 25-year ability to pay for this sucker. Question, how much is it going to operate? How much is it going to cost to maintain? And, eventually the systems have to be replaced, much like water pipe. Will it be a 300-year replacement cycle, or will it be a 50-year replacement cycle? All of these things go back to one thing: money. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to get the money from it? So we're quite concerned regarding the fact that the Board of Public Works approved a stormwater fee for the city of Los Angeles, but it was too hot to handle, so they put it to the state legislature, which passed it down to the LA County. Even the LA County Board of Supervisors are having problems with that stormwater fee. Is it going to be a fee? Is it going to be a tax? Is it going to be a bond? But it all goes back, provide a financial plan showing the ability to pay and where the monies are going to come, at best guess, for a 25-year period. SCAGS operates to the year 2035. Okay, let's have a real financial analysis for this particular activity from now till 2035 so that we can figure out what's going to happen to us, not just this year, not this 4 years, not the next 12 years, but till 2035.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Ms. James.
Good afternoon. My name is Kirsten James. I'm the Science and Policy Director with Heal the Bay, and I look forward to working with all the new members that have joined the committee. How
about the old members?
And the old members, of course.
The dean, not the old members, the dean, Mr. Labange.
I'm the oldest one here, Tom.
Yeah. All of you. We look forward to working with all of you.
The dean.
Okay. So thank you for agendizing this important item today. Heal the Bay is in strong support of securing new funding sources for water quality projects. We urgently need these solutions in this city and this region. The consequences of not doing so are extremely dire. As Shahram and Adele pointed out, we have Clean Water Act regulations that we must comply with, and the city has done a great job, but there's a lot more to be done. Prop O was a good start, but we need operation and maintenance funds, and we need to comply with over 24 TMDLs. The consequences of not doing so could be major violations for the city. So Heal the Bay has been very involved in the Clean Water, Clean Beaches measure that was at the county level. Unfortunately, as you've heard, this has somewhat stalled from the Board of Supervisors perspective. There still is a very active coalition, which we're a member of, many businesses, other organizations ready, waiting in the wings to help move something like this forward, but we need your leadership on this. So I'm here today to urge this committee and council to really prioritize a sustainable funding source for the city and for the region. Specifically, we ask that you explore moving forward expeditiously with a ballot measure, whether it be an opt-in type of approach that Adele outlined or something else, but it is urgently needed. Also, to actively support Proposition 218 reform. I know Mr. Blumenfeld had worked on that at the statewide level. We need to get the exemption for stormwater in there. Also, having DWP take a more active role. The multi-benefit projects for water quality and water supply can help leverage the funds. Also, bringing water quality components into all of your transportation project and street measures. This, again, can leverage funds. With the upcoming street bond proposal, we really need to get these water components in there. And then the last thing is to look at the proposal for the water bond at the statewide level and see, again, how we can leverage the water quality and water supply projects and leverage those funds. So we ask that you move forward and urge you to work on a secure funding source. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James. Mr. Blumenfield?
Thank you. And of course, that's, the need for finding this funding is partly why we're moving this motion and starting to look at it and really trying to drill down on what the needs are. And I appreciate the departments and what you're bringing to the table. Just as terms of questions, you mentioned, a couple of things stuck in my mind from what you said, $8 billion just for compliance over the next 20 years. And that $8 billion probably is just the surface of what, if we go beyond compliance to trying to actually do some of the great things we've just been talking about. Do you have a ballpark figure on the need beyond compliance, to achieve our goals?
You want to talk, Sharon? Go ahead.
The $8 billion, council member, is regarding the permit requirements on TMDLs, but obviously keep in mind that's the estimate as of right now. As we leverage, we could always do debt financing with that $8 billion. That would be multi-billion dollar furthermore through debt financing. So I believe having another $8 billion or $100 million per year would give us that opportunity to meet the permit requirements and also do other things that you have heard from us.
You're saying so?
Both of them.
16. You're saying $8 billion twice?
No, $8 billion over the next 20 years.
Plus several billion after
Good.
that.
There is a multiplier as far as in finance. If you do debt financing,
right.
that multiplies. Yes, if you go debt finance.
But I think our commitment, and this is how we have demonstrated, is that we will try to build comprehensive projects, whole projects, complete projects that are multi-benefit, and that's really, it's going to really have the money go further and help to leverage probably some other sources of funding that can move us forward. So this is the estimate that we have, and it's and I think with the watershed management plan in 18 months that will come before your council, it will give us a comprehensive look for each watershed of really meeting the water quality limits, but also addressing water in the watershed holistically. And that will be, I think, an eye-opener for all of us, and hopefully that will give us the foundation to move forward.
And I guess one just sort of comment to think about also, one thing you said about investing in stormwater, or you're looking at it as an investment, I think is great. And it also can relate to how the money that we need to do all this. One of the things I was involved in on the state level is some legislation that allowed for on-bill financing for home and residential water conservation methods to treat, giant cistern in your house, artificial turf, and all sorts of things like that, which can equally help, but in a more sort of distributive way, where we can look at this as an investment where people would actually, in essence, put the money up themselves, but over time. And so I would certainly urge you, as you're looking at the resources to make something like this happen, think creatively in terms of partnerships, but also in terms of how we can leverage the will of the public who wants to do some of these water conservation efforts on an individual basis.
We did a project actually a few years ago through a grant from the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission, which came through the state, to do a rain barrel program in part of the city. I believe in Councilman Koretz's district and Councilman Bonan's current district. But I think was great. I think once the article in the LA Times came out about the availability of the rain barrel program, that one day we received 2,400 applications, which tells you the interest of the public. Another thing that we probably should talk about, I didn't talk about ideas of potential revenue sources to help the idea that you brought, Councilman, is the income tax credit for green solutions at home, like energy. If you do stormwater capture infiltration, you should be able to get, whether at the federal level or state level, some kind of tax income credit incentive. Where people now, the money they invest can get it on their taxes. So an idea that we probably can put on the table, continue to look at it, to advocate for it somehow through the process that we go through.
And I don't want to pile all the time, but on the current Propo projects that are running out, how are we paying for the maintenance of those?
Currently, Councilmember, the completed projects are going through what we call optimization phase. Again, in finance, that means it is a capitalizable item. So we are using Prop O funding right now for optimization phase, which is over the next 2 to 3 years. Once that is completed, we actually need O&M, color of money and replacement, and that would be a part of budgetary process that we would go through.
You'll have a lot of questions.
Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, I know you've discussed this a couple times, but I'm still not clear on exactly where we are with the county measure and what the holdup is, and if there's some way for us to break it loose and just get cities that aren't on board to opt out and move on with it.
There was a meeting of the Board of Supervisors, I think back in March, which there was the input that came to them. There was issues, concerns, and the concern was the businesses that are paying for low-impact development fees or retrofitting their businesses to manage runoff on-site. They asked for a credit, which we supported at that time, and I think that was the change that happened was the last-minute change that somehow should have been done earlier. But that's something that already had been resolved. I think we have some kind of understanding that to give people who are doing stormwater capture on-site the credits, which you should not pay if you're doing it on-site. It's common sense. The other issue that we were dealing with that was a challenge was the impact on schools. Especially the schools across the region, but LA Unified School District was one of the areas that we were working with because of the concern that would create a impact on their general fund, which impacts schools and students and their general fund, which is not their capital cost. We worked with the county and others on trying to address this issue. And there is, I think, some agreements that the issue can be addressed through some credits, since the schools provide environmental curriculum. They do a lot of stormwater measures on site that can be done. And I believe at the time we worked with Councilman Weezer trying to get connections with the school district on addressing this issue. I think there is that understanding that could be worked out. But the bottom line at the end of the day, it was the county saw the responsibility for water compliance. The Board of Supervisors actually saw that the responsibility for water compliance is with the cities, which we agree, it's with the cities. They felt that they're doing the cities a favor by doing this and taking this on, which is good to bring everybody together. They did not see the cities come in support of this publicly, and some cities actually came in opposition. And that was, I think, if you go through the words, if you hear the words of Supervisor Molina and others during the hearing, she said, where are the cities? They're not here. As a result, the county stepped back, and now they're looking at ways to address this. The chair of the board, Supervisor Ridley Thomas, is holding his own groups trying to address and deal with some of the issues. But I think from our side, as a city and as a leader in this area, we stepped up and we actually brought in the cities, and we had a meeting over lunch. We had about 100 representatives from the cities across the region, and we would put it on the table for them. And we said you guys, do you know that you are responsible for this and you have to comply with this? And if you don't do it, you're going to be held and you're going to pay a lot of money, and you have to probably defend a lot of lawsuits. The best thing to do is to address this because there's a huge benefit to it. This has shifted. So there's a group right now working from the cities on developing a report and a measure to also reach out to the political leaderships in the cities as to making sure that there's a connection between their staff and the leadership. I think that what I think was obvious, that somehow the staff realized and there's a liability there, but I think the leadership somehow there was disconnect. And I think that's what is being brought together right now. So there's an effort happening now, and there's a group doing a report, and hopefully we'll work on this. At the same time, on the stakeholders process, there's a group developing an initiative and a measure that can really work for everyone, that can be inclusive of everyone, that we can move forward. But I think at some point in the city, we have to make a decision, when do we move on? And I think that's what we're looking forward to, having some more dialogue, as when we step up and if we don't see movement on the county side and somebody, I think we'll work with the mayor and your council and seeing how we move to the next level. And I think that's what we need to look at. And the next few months, I would say between now and November, we'll get a good sense where the other cities are. And based on discussions with you and the mayor, we'll have a good understanding and understand the priorities and how we can go forward.
Okay, and on another related topic, since it was mentioned talking about the sources of pollution, that so much of our stormwater pollution comes from our roads, is there any way that we can include funding in the road bond that's being discussed for some of the water cleanup as well?
I think it's part of the 24 items being addressed through the bond measure. It's on the table. I think it's addressed in the committee next door, in the Public Works Committee. So there is, I saw the Save Our Streets program and some of the questions that are being addressed by the program and some of the input that has been received, and that was an integral part of it as part of that issue. So it's on the table.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz, I actually had the same idea, but in the reverse. It seems to me that the Public Works, the Save Our Streets proposal conversation could be better informed in terms of being able to add these additional amenities that would help us mitigate our stormwater challenges. For example, dry wells or bioswales or rain gardens. It seems to me that if we're going to if we were to be successful in passing that bond and we're going to be opening up streets, it's a perfect opportunity to take or employ a site-specific sort of mitigation strategy for stormwater. And so I want to challenge you a little bit on the $8 billion, 20 years, well, rather, that's the TMDL part of it. But sort of prospectively in thinking about what it is that you all need for us to be in compliance, help me understand sort of the thinking in terms of sort of costing that out. Is it still sort of I hate to say antiquated, but we were talking about age here a second ago. Is it still the thinking of sort of channeling water and dumping it into the Santa Monica Bay? Or are we beginning to employ these ideas of site-specific type of solutions, which I think are more cost-effective and provide immediate recharge? Understanding that the San Fernando Valley, from a topographic perspective, is probably more amenable for that type of approach than maybe other parts of the city of Los Angeles. But what is sort of the dollar amount, and what is the school of thought behind that dollar?
The dollar amount is within the concept of managing runoff as a resource. We call the blue-green technology instead of the gray technology. We are looking at shifting the way of thinking and not just building gray projects, which basically concrete, and looking for green technologies, which has the multi-benefits. So that's something that we embrace, that's something we're working on, that's something all the projects that we're doing as part of Prop O have those at their core. they're appealing to people, but also they have the added benefit, because for every dollar invested for clean water compliance, if you do it in a green, blue way, which is the sustainable way, the reports show there's about $20 benefit in deferred cost or added benefit. Deferred costs such as flooding, flood protection, added benefits such as water supply augmentation. So the reports speak to that, and we've done the projects here. We're not just talking about theory now, we're talking about projects that we've built across the city. So yes, I mean the $8 billion has that built into it, but the shift that we have done is this new permit, I think, have made the entire region as a whole look at management of water quality compliance in an enhanced water management plan which focuses on those concepts. And we are leading it for the 4 watersheds for us, and we should be complete. That would verify the $8 billion that we had prior to this, and hopefully we will continue. But the commitment is we believe in managing runoff closer to the source. It makes it easier, cheaper, and then there's an added benefit that can really help all of us.
Well, and to that end, I want to salute our colleagues, again, members who are doing so much good work on the Save Our Streets bond. But the more that we talk about sort of the challenges that we have with water and this, I mean, it should almost be a green-blue bond, because I think we can attack this, the challenges that we have with our streets and our stormwater runoff all in the same time. And so I know that might be a little bit controversial, but I think that we're going to have to look at it as a phased-in approach. We're going to continue the item and hear back with your written report, but I really do want to commend you and Sanitation in particular for Prop O. It is a tremendous success story that needs to be told if we're going to earn the faith and ultimately votes of this city to move forward with this stormwater mitigation challenge that we have. It was done well, it was done on budget, it was done with tremendous amount of accountability, and we won. And so now we've got to be able to, I think, take that victory lap with our voters. So thank you very much for your stewardship. Mr. Labange, for your close.
Yeah, real quick, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Pop question, 2 water professionals, East Valley Water Reclamation. Remember that project?
The shower to
All right,
fires.
the mayor
Or what is it?
says tomorrow, should I start it? Adele, what do you think?
Right now, we don't have permit. The permit expired. There's no permit.
No, I know you have
It's
no
a great
permit.
thing to do, yes.
Got it. Okay, so I just want to put that on the track. Rick Orloff, I know you're listening down there. I think we have to begin the East Valley Water Reclamation Plan if we want to be in the vision of that. All water is very important, and that was a project ready to go, but it was fathered by 2 people who were not here when it finally came to term, which was Mr. Wilson, the governor, and Mr. Reardon, the mayor, who kicked it off, and it wasn't until Mr. Hahn and I guess Mr. Davis was the governor at the time. So I think those are important things to look at. The toughest job that you'll have is all the water and where it goes, because if you pull water out of the river for other areas, the river could die. The water lives because of you. The water lives and changed because of the way you transformed your treatment. Where it used to come in polluted water, now there's life and there's more trees. And Mr. Fuentes, I was with the mayor, and he had a 1 million tree initiative. This is Mr. Villaraigosa. We were right next to the river, and I said, I know, Mr. Mayor, you're not going to make your 1 million, but if you counted all the trees in the river, you may get close. Because nothing but trees grew in the river in the last 10 years because of the water treatment. I would just say the last thing I want to say about the river right now, check dams. I want check dams, and I want sanitation, a little rowboat, and just to pull the trash out. The biggest sin Los Angeles makes is when we have a dirty river and the rains come and we dump on Long Beach. I mean, and they dump on the Port of Los Angeles, dump on San Pedro Bay. I think if we pull a lot of it out, and street cleaning is so important to this, and I would like to really, if we really want to do something, we put street cleaning underneath the sanitation, because the same drain that you have to clean could be cleaner if you clean the streets. And this is no disrespect to street services, but it's really a form of function. I said my piece. I look forward to more of this as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Very good. Thank you very much. We'll see you back with your written report. Mr. Prieto, number 4, please.
Number 4, resolution, Huizar Alarcon, relative to approval of an application to renew designation of the city as a recycling market development zone. And submittal of the application to Cal Recycle as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Chair Fuentes, members. My name's Karen Coca. I work for the Bureau of Sanitation. I'm the division manager for the Citywide Recycling Division. So, hi. The item before you is a good news item and has no money attached to it, so it's even better. Basically, we're asking you to forward a resolution to the full council for adoption that would allow us to re-up our designation as a recycling market development zone. I just want to note that the action has to be taken by September 3rd, so there is a time limit on that. And for a very brief presentation, Michelle Mikesell, who is the Rmdz Administrator, as well as about 5 other things as well. And go ahead.
Good afternoon. The Rmdz program combines recycling with economic development to fuel new businesses, expand existing ones, create jobs, and divert waste from landfills. The state-funded program provides attractive loans, technical assistance, and free product marketing to businesses that use materials from waste stream to manufacture their products and are located in a zone. The zones cover roughly 88,000 square miles of California, from the Oregon border to San Diego. Assistance is provided by local zone administrators to expand a business that uses recycled materials through creative partnerships, low-interest business loans, and business development referrals. The City of Los Angeles Rmdz includes all areas within the boundaries of the City of Los Angeles. The renewal of the city's Rmdz as an Rmdz is still necessary to facilitate local and regional planning, coordination, and supporting existing recycled-based manufacturing businesses, as well as attractive private sector recycling investments in the Rmdz. The background basically is that on March 18, 1992, City Council adopted a resolution to create the first Rmdz in the Wilmington Industrial Park. The motion states that manufacturing with recycled feedstock is a rapidly growing industry that can help stem the tide of our eroding local job base. On February 1, 1994, the city adopted a motion to expand the Rmdz in Wilmington Industrial Park to include the boundaries of the city and renew the Rmdz designation for another 10-year period to expire on March 18, 2003. On January 21, 2003, the city adopted a resolution to renew the Rmdz designation for another 10 years, and that expired on March 31, 2013. The city's Rmdz designation needs to be renewed for another 10 years. The new expiration will be on March 31, 2030. Sanitation has completed the renewal application and CEQA exemption, and CalRecycle has tentatively approved the renewal of the city's Rmdz with the understanding that the council will approve the resolution within 60 days. Our success story is that since the designation of the Los Angeles Rmdz, a total of 15 loans have been funded worth over $11.5 million. As a result of the approved Rmdz loans, over 170 new jobs were created and approximately 142,000 tons per year of secondary materials are recycled into new consumer products. The Rmdz program has made loans for for materials such as e-waste, paper, construction and demolition debris, plastic, used textiles, used tires, and green waste. The Rmdz Administrator works closely with the county's Rmdz Administrator, as well as collaborates with the Mayor's Business Office, the new Economic Development Department, the city's Building and Safety Department, and other local development entities such as the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Weezer, do you have any questions as the maker of the motion?
No, we just, it's a great program, as been mentioned, and we've administered over $11 million in the past that we've received, and so we want to continue this, obviously, for other reasons stated by our staff. Thank you.
Very good. Members, there are no cards. Any questions or debate on the item? Mr. LeBon.
Just the same point I meant about water use, reclaim water. I know power side's here, but the water side is taking another purple pipe extension on the Los Angeles Greenville project, which takes Glendale, Los Angeles water reclamation into Griffith Park north to Universal. They're going to put another service for the southern part of the Griffith Park area. But that's a big key because there's a struggle when you come down to it, because we could put green water there. You're a former state representative. I want you to call Caltrans. We should put purple pipe on every freeway. We all want green things, and the nutrients that come out of the well-treated water, not well, like under the ground, but very good treated water by sanitation, should be a purple pipe on with Caltrans. And CLA, write me a motion, because if you go through next time you go through the four-level interchange, which is right here where the Santa Ana, the Pasadena, the Hollywood, and the Harbor San Pedro Freeway come together, you can look how it's poorly managed landscape because they cut the water off because they don't want it. But if we get purple pipe there, that should be a big plus for us. You know, instead of 1 million trees, 1 million miles of purple pipe to reclaim. But because our parkways at one time, freeways, were beautiful because of the landscaping and water. So that's an idea, but you're going to write me a motion on that
And
to
I
work
want
with
to be
the
a
state.
second on that idea,
Thank you
Mr.
very much,
Labange,
Mr.
because
Chair.
that, as it relates to item 3, you're absolutely right. We completely forgot to talk about the purple pipe in that item.
Right.
As it relates to this one here, number 4, on the RMDZs,
Yeah.
Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, it's not very controversial, but I just wanted to commend you for what you're doing. This is something I've been talking about for a long time. We need to find markets in our own local area for recycled products. We have more control then, we have more of a sense that they're actually getting recycled, and I'd say less of an environmental impact than shipping them all over the world and then having them come back to us. So I think it's a win-win every possible way, including local jobs, et cetera. So I'm glad to see this moving forward.
Very good. Mr. Blumenfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great concept, though. You create markets for recycled products. It's great. But I just had a question, though, curiosity. How does this work with, is there any impact on the general fund?
No.
No, we actually, the RMDZ, we're a facilitator for the RMDZ. The loans are made by the state. We simply administer them and track their success, but we simply act as a facilitator. We get a very small amount of money, which allows staff to go and travel and network with their peers. But there is no general fund impact and no cost to the city for this program.
And the renewal is good for how long? For
Every 10 years, we have to renew it.
Great.
Very good. Members hearing and seeing no objection, that item is out unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 5.
Number 5.
Mr. 5.
Department of Water and Power and City Attorney reports and ordinance relative to public necessity finding concerning the acquisition by eminent domain of 6 parcels of real property located within adjacent to the city limits northeast area of San Fernando Valley for the protection of the city's aqueducts. We have staff from the Department of Water and Power, City Attorney's Office.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Prieto. If we can go ahead and begin with this presentation, members.
Good afternoon, Mr.
Good
Chair.
afternoon.
Emily Medueno of Murphy & Everett Special Litigation Counsel.
If you could pull up that microphone there so we can make sure and hear you. This one's an important item here. Please proceed.
I'll go ahead and start. Honorable council members, my name is John Miller. I work in the Aqueducts section of your Department of Water and Power. Before we begin, I would like to introduce the other members of the team here who have assembled the resources to make this presentation to you. Before beginning with the people with microphones, I'd like to introduce our 2 without microphones. Mr. Henry Bowie, go ahead and raise your hand there. And Mr. John Newen of our right-of-way engineering team who have provided the exhibits that you're going to see in the presentation today. And go ahead.
Guy Lammers, Department of Water and Power, Real Estate Section.
Emily Medueno again.
Deputy City Attorney Jean-Claude Berthet.
Olivia Sevesville, Lunga City Administrative Office.
Council members, this is a rather complicated subject, so I'll be reading to you a little bit here just to make sure that I'm covering everything that I need to cover and that I've not made any mistakes. Our purpose here today is to discuss the proposed adoption by City Council of an ordinance for the resolution of necessity to condemn 6 parcels in and adjacent to the Sylmar district of Los Angeles. To adopt the ordinance, council will need to make 4 findings, and I'm going to read those findings here to you. Let's hold on here while we make sure our logistics are completed. Oh, thank you very much there. Okay, the first finding is that the public interest and necessity require the protection of the first and second Los Angeles aqueducts. And I think you're all familiar with these 2 aqueducts. They're premier assets of the city of Los Angeles and extremely valuable to the Department of Water and Power's ratepayers. These 2 aqueducts pass through the 6 parcels, and I'll be discussing that more here in a moment. But that ties into the next 3 findings. The second finding is that protection of the first and second Los Angeles aqueducts is planned and located in the manner that will be the most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury in this condemnation process. The third finding is that the 6 parcels to be acquired through the condemnation process are necessary for the protection of the first and second Los Angeles aqueducts. And the fourth finding is that your Department of Water and Power has made offers to the property owners to acquire the 6 parcels proposed for condemnation. What we're going to do here is I will provide supporting facts for the first 3 findings, and then Mr. Lammers here from our real estate division will provide the facts for the final finding. So let's go ahead and talk about the findings, first 3 findings. The first finding, as I mentioned, is that the public interest and necessity require the protection of the first and second Los Angeles aqueducts. So the case for this is simple and obvious. It has to do with the importance of the aqueducts to this city. The first Los Angeles aqueduct often provides up to 200 million gallons per day of partially treated drinking water to LADWP ratepayers. Typically, it supplies up to 30% of overall city water demands. That's about 180 million gallons per day. This aqueduct was completed in 1913. This year marks the 100th anniversary of that aqueduct. It's old. We spent decades rehabilitating it, and I think this action here can be interpreted as part of the efforts to extend the life of this facility for future generations of Angelinos. The second Los Angeles aqueduct was completed in 1970, and it also often provides over 200 million gallons of water per day to DWP ratepayers. Typically, this aqueduct supplies up to 20% of the overall city water demand, so that would be about 120 million gallons a day. During wet years, the combined water supply of both aqueducts can meet 2/3 of the city's demand for water, and it's an inexpensive form of water compared to the alternative, which is water from the California State Water Project or the Colorado River Aqueduct. The cost of replacement water for both aqueducts, assuming it's available, can exceed $500,000 per day. Now, these aqueducts were damaged at the parcels of concern, and I'll be going into how they could be damaged here in a moment. It would not only terminate these sources of water, but also hydroelectric power for the city, because there's as many as 8, or actually 9 hydroelectric plants that go up and down the Los Angeles aqueduct system, and a loss of an ability to operate the aqueduct would impact those sources of power. It would also endanger flood control in the source watersheds of the aqueducts, because the major flood control system for those watersheds is the Los Angeles aqueduct system. Damage in the parcels of concern would also mean flooding in the area of the parcels of concern in Sierra Highway, which is an adjoining thoroughfare, and I'll be showing you that in a bit here. Threatening public safety and damage to property. It should be noted in particular that the first LA aqueduct exists as an unreinforced concrete tunnel as shallow as 2 or 3 feet below the ground surface on the southerly side of these parcels, and it's extremely vulnerable to damage from uncontrolled surcharges. It's currently protected from adjacent construction traffic by temporary K-rails. There's not only an interest but a necessity to protect the aqueducts in this region. And I think we have on one of the exhibits here, if John, maybe you could stand up and show the fourth one with the tunnels. You can see there's a picture of the tunnels there. Oh, okay. Pardon me. It's over here. Here we see the tunnel. It actually looks like it's steel, but that's very smooth concrete. As I mentioned, it's unreinforced, and so this is the inside of the tunnel there in the parcels of concern. So protection, the first finding is, we believe, demonstrated by these facts. Protection of these assets is of vital importance for the welfare of the city, its inhabitants, and the greater metropolitan region. It's also critical to the mission of DWP, a utility owned by the public. The second finding is that protection of the first and second Los Angeles aqueducts through this condemnation process is planned and located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. It's obvious that the aqueducts need to be protected from what I previously related. We should note that they are in need of protection against outside development, particularly given a recent zone change in Los Angeles County in the area. And at this point, I think it would be helpful if we distributed some maps and you can see for yourselves. Do you have the handouts? Mr. Nguyen here is going to hand out copies of maps which are replications of what you see up here so we can follow this, what you have there. I'll wait till they're passed out and I'll show you here and you can follow on these maps that you get. This map here shows, which you have before you, shows the parcels of concern. This is Sierra Highway right along here, and then the city boundary follows this V-notch here. You all have the map before you? Okay. So this is the city boundary, and then south of it is Sylmar District and City of Los Angeles. The first LA Aqueduct comes down this 100-foot corridor right here. That's actually an easement, and then it transitions in this area to a 40-foot corridor, and then it comes out in this area. It's fairly hilly in this area. It gets as deep as 45 to 75 feet in this region right here, and then it gets very shallow, and in this region right here, it's as shallow as 2 or 3 feet, as I mentioned. The second Los Angeles Aqueduct emerges from the public right-of-way of Sierra Highway there, and then comes out through this corridor, and this is fee title property right there that the city owns. I'll allude to the parcels by their distinctive numerals at the end of their county assessor's parcel numbers, and the maps should have those numbers highlighted for you. Parcel 10, through which the first LA Aqueduct passes on the county side, was acquired by the current owner some 13 years ago. That's right here. Note that it shows continuous development with parcel 9. So what's happened here is that we have this paved area here that's crossed over into parcel 9. I think that's parcel 10 and parcel 9, I think. Yeah, there we go.
Other way around.
The other way around? Okay, sorry about that. I got it backwards here. Anyway, I think you're able to follow what I was saying there. Parcels 6 and 7 are down here on the city side, and the two aqueducts either pass through them or adjacent to them, and they were acquired by the current owner about 2 years ago. Parcels 43 and 42, up in this area right here, were also acquired by the current owner about 2 years ago and are on the county side. The first and second Los Angeles aqueducts have been present on or adjacent to these parcels since 1913 and 1970, respectively, when these parcels were undeveloped and not being used. Note that as I pointed out, that the parcels are adjacent to Sierra Highway in the area of the 6 parcels, and they're thus vulnerable to the increasing development that has affected this area in recent decades. 4 of the parcels are in the county side. We've got 43 and 42 here, and then 9 and 10. And the land on which the first LA Aqueduct is located was zoned for agricultural use in this area. However, it's now being rezoned under a county general plan known as the One Valley, One Vision plan, general plan, to an M1DP zoning. And M1DP zoning would allow for manufacturing and other uses incompatible with the fragile nature of the century-old aqueduct tunnel in this region. Now, to return to the second finding, let's ask whether protection of the aqueducts against the hazards of outside development and zone changes is the approach that is most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. Excuse me. Yes.
Excuse me for just a moment.
You want him to talk about the third finding? Okay. Oh, okay. Right. At any rate, I've been advised to try to accelerate this for you. I did want to mention here with the second finding on the protection, the property owners, the current property owners have exposed the aqueducts to quite a bit of threatening actions of late. That includes extensive grading over the aqueducts, moving a substantial amount of dirt over the aqueducts, driving large construction and grading equipment directly over the aqueducts. Yes, sir.
No, I just said, wow, that's big time.
Yeah, I know. trespassing, placing large piles of manure near a raised opening of the first LA aqueduct, and installing and operating a business over the first LA aqueduct, and engaging in these activities without obtaining the required permits. Your staff and the Department of Water and Power have addressed these vulnerabilities partly by deploying K-rails and guards. I do also want to note that the parcel 6 and 7 area right here has traditionally what's called a staging area where department crews have set up their vehicles and staff to do annual inspections of the first aqueduct in this area, and that area has been impacted by the recent development. We had manure placed there. That's a sanitation hazard in addition to the structural hazard that exists by the operations there. Let's see, I think the idea was to have you talk about the third finding.
Okay, the third finding is the 6 parcels to be acquired, which Mr. Miller has described in great detail here as being parcels 9, 10, 42 and 43, and parcels 6 and 7 on the city side. The Department of Water and Power on November 7th, 2012, made an offer to purchase parcels 9 and 10 on the county side, and on March 26, 2013, we've made offers to purchase 42, 43, and 6 and 7 on the city side.
Thank you, Guy. Jean-Claude Berthet with the City Attorney's Office, and I would just like to emphasize not only are the actions by this individual that owns these properties through his 2 companies, and that's one of the main reasons why we were here today, and our office had to file a temporary restraining order against his actions to try and maintain the status quo at the time where water and power facilities resources can go in there and operate and maintain the first LA aqueduct. But we also had a zone change by the County of LA, and that was the last straw, in essence, that required the department to protect its resources out in this area, and it was changed from a commercial zone to an industrial zone. And obviously the department staff had made brief calculations that just an industrial zone where you have a 20-pound press is not compatible with the aqueduct that's 100 years old and with unreinforced concrete. So we decided to push hard and request that we condemn the properties.
Excuse me, that was, Jean-Claude, you meant to say a 20,000-pound press.
Correct.
Not 20-pound, right?
Yeah.
That'd be a frail aqueduct, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, but nonetheless, it's a real problem. And so for the record, have you all been able to establish all of the findings that you need to in order to proceed?
We will have to have these findings made at the full council hearing, and the third, well, essentially, all the facts are before you to make the findings that are required, and we will be requesting that the full council make the findings and then a vote by a 2/3 majority in order to condemn the parcels.
Very good. Well, I would recommend, members, that we pass this post haste here because it is problematic for the integrity of the aqueduct. Members, are there any questions for our panel here?
I would only add that it's required by ordinance, and it must be done by ordinance. And also, the CAO looked at the fact that it would be much more expensive, which is really obvious, to redirect the aqueduct than it would be just to condemn the property and pay the price.
Absolutely.
Very good. I would ask that if you all, it doesn't have to be as a matter of this item here, but if you could help us understand how we could best communicate to the county on a going forward basis that they really ought to consider these city assets before they go ahead and upzone some of these areas, that could significantly impact purchase price in the future. So if you can help us understand how to do that, I'm happy to try to assist. Mr. Blumenfield?
Yeah, just trying to understand the scale. What's the fair market value of these?
We've had an appraiser go out and estimate the value for the 6 parcels, and it came out to $808,000. We do have to have a reappraisal if the council were to go ahead and allow us to condemn the properties, and we don't know what the value would be, but we do know that the existing appraisal has been $808,000.
And then, assuming you do get the land, it can still be used for more passive purposes, right? I mean,
Correct. The intended use right now is just to maintain it as is, so that the resources can go in and operate and maintain the first LA aqueduct and the second LA aqueduct that's in that area.
Again, depending on the day, 50% of our water flows through this area here, so we want to absolutely maintain its integrity. Very good. Hearing and seeing no additional comments, Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, maybe a hair off topic. We're acquiring this property to protect our aqueduct system and from business practices that are potentially harmful. I'm wondering if we've looked at this more broadly in terms of everything that could be endangering our aqueducts, including things like the practice of fracking, which could endanger both the water supply and provide an earthquake danger. Have we or are we looking at that practice as something we should protect our aqueduct from?
There's been one proposal for fracking up in the Rose Valley area, which is just south of the Inyo County southern boundary, and that was brought to us for review, and we had comments to make about it. Normally, something of that scale will follow through the normal process of being reviewed through our real estate division and through an engineering review, and they will follow our recommendations. We haven't had anyone surreptitiously try to sneak in and do that. What happened here was the owner was advised of the procedure of working with the department, and he chose to ignore it and act on his own.
So in that case, though, what was the result? Did we put in our comments and get ignored, and they went ahead with the fracking process?
It's not moving forward. It's not moving forward.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good, members. The item is approved. Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you, Council
It'll be
members.
moved to the
Yeah.
full City Council. Very good. Item number 6.
Item number 6, your final item, Chair, members. DWP report relative to proposed power sales agreement with Southern California Public Power Authority and related agency agreement for the Hebrew 1 geothermal energy project. Also have staff from the CAO's office.
Mr. Chair, council members, Randy Howard, LADWP, and with me is Mike Webster from LADWP. We probably have the easiest topic of your afternoon.
We shall see.
I believe so. What we have before you, and we're seeking your approval of a geothermal project to assist us in meeting our RPS goals and meeting our strategy to exit out of coal. Mr. Webster is prepared to walk you through a presentation, or because of the lateness of the day, if you just have questions, we're willing to respond to questions as well, but we can walk you through a presentation if you'd like.
Members, what is the pleasure of the committee? I'm sure that you've all reviewed your notes
Well, I think,
beforehand.
just my suggestion, when you come to council, give a 5 to 7 minute presentation, because I think this is important for all of us to know, but I think because of that, that's my suggestion.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I think that the full body ought to have a better sense of how we get our baseload energy and the types of contracts that we engage in. So I think that's very, very good. Members, any questions for this panel with respect to this particular item? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Kretz.
I just wanted to make a comment that since we move forward with our efforts to get off coal, I've encouraged that we take our time to determine what we replace it with and how environmentally positive and clean and safe a replacement we find. And this certainly is a terrific step in that direction. So I commend you all for what you've done on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfield?
I just want to ask about the potential rate impact.
Okay, let me just jump to that particular slide. The potential rate impacts are noted on page 5. So there's 2 points I'd like to make on page 5. There is a lot of detail here. But when the financial plan, it was based on what's called Case 119, went for action, we had a certain set of projections. This project, as it fits in, is actually lower than that original projection. So we were better off from a rates perspective than we were when we did the financial analysis for Case 119. The bottom point tells us what is the impact on customers, because ultimately customers will contribute towards this project. So the last bullet talks about that the cost per kilowatt hour of this project is 0.038 cents per kilowatt hour throughout that contract term. Now, if you take an average residential customer, about 500 kilowatts per month, it ranges between 10 cents and 20 cents for this project alone, which again is better than the financial plan that we had put forward. And that's per month. And that is per month.
Very good. Members, any additional questions, concerns, comments? Just a process question, and I'm just sort of curious in this sort of new environment that I find myself in. Does the ratepayer advocate, the question for the CAO, have an impact statement or a report that they do as processes go through the agency?
He's right here.
Because I want to be real careful, I think. I want to make sure that the DWP, their job is procurement, managing our assets and understanding how to sort of provide the energy. But do you get a point to sort of say, I happen to like this, don't like this about some of the procurement practice?
DWP gave me a chance to review this. I had no objection. We previously reviewed their procurement process on all these projects, and this project conformed to that process. It's publicly bid. These are at a market price, and it's an established project that's operated for years. It's been rebuilt in some components, but it is reasonably priced.
So from a process perspective, though, just for my benefit in the committees, do you put out a quarterly sort of observation, or is it sort of case by case?
Given our level of staffing at this point, we try to pick the projects we comment on specifically.
Very good.
Let me give you a process here. The ratepayer advocate is given the opportunity before the commission hears the item to look at any proposal that might go through. And then when it comes to the CAO, we also discuss with the ratepayer advocate what their view is on, based on their experience, what the rate looks like.
Very good. I just want to make sure that we're taking full advantage of what our voters have asked us to do. That's very helpful to me. Members, any additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, that item is approved. Thank you very much for your presentation. We do have one speaker card, Dr. Tom Williams. Oh, pass. All right, very good, members. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.